that into terms we are all familiar with, what comes out is boundless compassion, the chant that we had just chanted before this talk, and which we will again chant after this talk, as a constant theme of our life, as a constant theme of our Zen practice. And again, to put it in more identifiable terms for those of us raised in a culture different from the East Asian out of which Zen came, and many of us may have been raised in the Jewish, Christian, Muslim, the Abrahamic traditions. That is a very influential and a major set of traditions in the world today. The way I can express that term Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva in terms identifiable or in terms that would resonate with people from the Abrahamic traditions would be infinite, unconditional, boundless love. So if I were to give a title to this talk, it would be Finding Love Everywhere in All Things. And that is also my answer to the question, what is Zen? Every Zen talk is supposed to address this central question. What is Zen? What brings us to this practice of sitting still and being aware of our breath and letting our mind come to a point of stillness? What's the point of it all? Earlier, I invited you to share your aspirations as we begin this 2-day session, and many of you had hit it on the button. It is precisely that search for unconditional love, that search for infinite love that lies deep in our hearts that we want to activate and express and actually discover for ourselves, so that out of ourselves, out of that discovery that we find in our through our practice, it flows out of us so that it can be given through us to the rest of the world. Not that we're the only one, we are simply puny little sentient beings that are also invited to bathe in that, to shower in that, to soak in that infinite and unconditional love already being given to all. And in doing so, we know that we are simply an instrument of that love in living our lives. Many of us come to Zen with different kinds of motivations. In the orientation talk, you were asked, why do you come to Zen? Or in my first interview with those of you who are beginning practice, in the so-called initial interview with a teacher, I asked you, what do you seek in taking on this practice? And you may have your specific ways of formulating that, but usually there are 4 categories that we find people responding to when they are asked, what brings you to this practice? One would be, of course, curiosity, having read about it, wanting to know what it is all about, and so on, without really understanding what it is as yet. But as one enters into it, one finds that it is really something that feeds not just our inner being, but feeds our entire being. So it also has its so-called health benefits. It helps you in addressing stress in your life. It enables you to go slowly and enable you to taste the flowers along the way and so on. So it does have its wholesome health benefits. So that's the second motivation that people say drives them or brings them to Zen. And now the third motivation that we put in our set of ways of people coming to Zen is the search for a deeper spiritual life. But what is a spiritual life after all? It is a search that comes from the innermost core of our being to discover the holy, to discover the transcendent, to discover that which is most important, to discover that which is ultimate in our lives. And in so doing, find our inner peace. And what does that inner peace bring us? That inner peace brings us to an openness that allows us to see each and everything as our own kin. So that is how I would describe living a spiritual life entails. It entails coming home to the core, the innermost core of our being, and in being home, in finding our groundedness in that home, as one of our Sangha members articulated so well in one of the recent talks, Kathleen Cole noted that one of the key fruits of Zen for her was a sense of groundedness. So in finding that groundedness, in finding your place of home in the innermost core of your being, you are able to open our eyes, and we are able to see each and everyone, each and everything as deeply interconnected to this very being that I am. In short, to see each and everything and each and everyone as kin to me. And that is what brings forth, or rather, that is also implied in the fourth motivation that people express when they are asked to describe why they come to Zazen. The fourth motivation, according to the textbook, is when somebody has these burning questions that make one restless until they find the answers. The question of who am I? What is the purpose of life? What is the point of it all? How can I live my life in a most meaningful way that I will have no regrets at my point of death? And that fourth motivation is precisely what keeps us burning with zeal in going deep into this practice and going to the hilt of it. And where we end up really is precisely that same innermost core, where we discover the holy in everything, and we discover our interconnectedness with each and everything. And so, in other words, seeing our interconnectedness with each and everything is to see and discover that love in all things. And then, from then on, it's simply a matter of living it out in our day-to-day life. Earlier in the aspirations, Sulaiman shared that his aspiration is to live what he has discovered in Zen, not just on an occasional basis, maybe a few times a month or once a week, but day to day. And that is precisely a very good expression of what Zen practice is all about. Day by day, moment by moment, we are living according to that which Zen is all about, namely unconditional, infinite, and boundless love. Now, these are highfalutin words, some might say. And if you just consider the words, yes, they are. So what are we talking about here? What is that path that is about finding love everywhere and in all things, which is how I would describe the Zen path. What is Zen? There are many ways of describing it, but now I would like to take that phrase. Zen is finding love everywhere in all things. Are you with me? Let's listen to what happens when we sit here in stillness, breathing in and breathing out, just being aware of that breath. We come to a point of stillness. Of course, along the way, we have to struggle with these distractions here and there. Oh, I need to check this out, or I haven't paid my bills, or what will I do later on when my friend comes? So many things come up in our mind as we try to sit here in stillness. But we are invited to simply put those aside, acknowledge them for what they are, that they need to be addressed in their own due time. But now is a time to just sit here and be still. And with each breath, we simply put ourselves here and now and allow our whole being to be fully relaxed, and yet fully attentive in each and every moment. My whole bodily, my whole being right here, right now, immovable as a mountain. That is what we are invited to take on in this initial phase of Zen. And so the word finding love everywhere and in all things has two aspects of it. Finding means searching for it, looking for it. Where can I find it? Where can I discover it? And so it is that finding that many of us always, or not just many of us, that all of us have to also take care of, this initiative on our part. And as Scott put it earlier in a very, very succinct way, it is to clear the way for whatever blocks the receiving of that infinite love that's already being showered upon us, and whatever blocks the giving of it from my side. So this is the so-called effort on our part to allow ourselves to be focused and centered, and not to let the myriad things that come in our lives that move us in different directions to sway us, but allow that resolution, allow that resolve to just bring us to this moment here and now. For those of you who are taking on this practice of shikantaza, or just sitting, just take that hint. As you sit there, nothing else, just sit. And then the bell rings, bong. Take that also, take that to heart. It's just bong, nothing else. And then as you put your palms together to prepare for a short walk, it's just that. Bowing, just that. And then as you stand up and take your walk, or as you take a glass of water, or as you need to go to the bathroom, every step along the way, just that. And then the time comes again and you're back to your sitting position. You take the usual gestures of acknowledgement of the holy, and then again, experience just sitting. Come to that focal point where there is nothing but just sitting. Forget everything else, but just sit, be there, and just sit. Experience that just sitting in a way that there's no more self trying to just sit, but it's just sitting. And that is, again, something that the 13th century Zen master Dogen offers us a hint of when he says in his treatise or his talk entitled Genjo Koan, or Realizing the Way, to realize the awakened way is to realize the self. To realize the self is to forget the self. There's more to that, and I'll go back to that later, but now in sitting, just forget the self and just let the sit be thorough. Now, there are among you those who are also guided in practice through the help of a koan. That is specifically for those who have very, very active discursive minds that keep trying to analyze, trying to compare, trying to sort out things so that you can really clarify things for yourself. And that's a gift of us, for us human beings, to be able to use our intellect, to be able to use our rational mind to sort out things so that we can be clear. Yes, but that can also be a hindrance to really that arriving at that place of focus, to arriving at that place where it's just that. And so for such individuals with a mind that is always active and taking you all over the place, a koan is given. And one of the more effective koans that Zen tradition has found through the centuries is this koan about mu. And those of you who are practicing with this know about this. The main point is that as you sit there, your task, which you have already accepted to take on, and it's mission impossible indeed, is to simply let that mu be the focal point of your entire awareness, and let that be the center of your whole being. As you breathe in there, breathe in, and as you breathe out, allow that out breath to be accompanied by, so that there is nothing but, not something out there that is called mu, not even an idea that you have to define as mu, but simply losing yourself in that mu and allowing that mu to be the gateway to that which is nameless and boundless, but which, if you describe it from its effects, it really is a realm of infinite and boundless unconditional love. But the way to that unconditional love is, taking again the words of Dogen Zenji, to forget the self. If you wish to be awakened, forget that little self that always wishes this or that, or has this or that preference, and just allow it to be focused in this moment, whether you're doing shikantaza or just sitting, or whether you're doing, just allow this moment to be thoroughly realized as just this moment, opening you out to that realm where all the time in the universe and all eternity is contained in just this moment. And in right here, right now, you will see that that is the center of the whole universe. Be careful, not the self, not I am the center of the universe. That's precisely what we need to throw out of the way. And many of us seem to live in that way, that the I is the center of the universe. And that is what is called narcissism, when you have to reference everything to the little I, the egoic I, and therefore that blocks your way of really relating to others in genuine humanity and in genuine love and compassion. So it is that little I that has to be blown away and allowed to open up to that big self that will be discovering in this Zen practice. And in discovering that big self, that little self has dissolved. And it is simply one that seeks the well-being of all, and that is willing to give oneself so that all may find their fullness of well-being. And that is what is called in the Buddhist terminology metta, maitri, which is translated as loving kindness. Metta is the Pali version and maitri is the Sanskrit version. It has the sense of an intimate interconnectedness that is kinship, or friendliness is another translation. But friendliness, not just in the bland way of friend like in Facebook friends, but in the true friend that is willing to give one's life for one's friend. And so it is that friendliness, that is that kinship, that is the interconnectedness, the interchangeability of selves. In short, finding myself in yourself and finding in each and everyone else who I am. So it is that total openness that lets that unconditional love gush forth from me. Not that I am the source of that, but once I have abandoned myself to that, then it just takes this being that I am, with my historical, with my cultural, with my linguistic and ethnic and individual psychological gifts, as well as baggage, as the instrument of that move to embrace each and everyone else in maitri, loving compassion, or loving kindness. And a corollary or a natural accompaniment of that maitri or metta is karuna. Both Sanskrit and Pali have the same word, karuna, which entails a willingness to suffer with those who are suffering, because it's your own suffering, because you have realized that that's your own. And that is, again, a fruit of that practice whereby we have forgotten our little self and we are now able to see in each and everything around us that which our hearts are longing for. What is our heart longing for most of all? A Western culture, the Western culture would say it is love, it is unconditional love that we are all longing for. And in finding that, then we are able to live in a way that enables us to give that unconditional love to others also. But we say, well, I'm not yet there. Then you're invited to just sit and be still and allow that unconditional love to come and shower itself upon you so that you will know you are already there. You are that. You have all the capacity to receive that unconditional love, and you will realize it and know that you are okay for all eternity. And with that assurance, then you can now live the rest of your life in simply allowing that unconditional love to ooze from you and affirm each and everything, each and everyone around you in the particular ways that you can affirm them in unconditional love. Not that you go around and always have that fuzzy feeling and try to embrace everybody. There are certain things as social conventions which we cannot just ignore. But in the midst of those social conventions, in the midst of the way we relate to one another casually or more than casually, in those different ways, somehow that unconditional love will ooze out of one who is already steeped in that. When you have found that in your own innermost core and you know that you are already at home in that, in short, when you have found your groundedness in love, that ground will then burst forth with plants and fruits and flowers, and it will replenish this scorched earth seeking for love. And each one of us bears the seed of that unconditional love that is seeking to blossom forth and enable our lives to simply be a conduit for that unconditional love. Now, it all boils down to how we are able to just be still and open our heart, open the eyes of our heart, open the ears of our heart, open our whole very being to realize that fact that is already there. And that is what Zen practice guides us to. It gives us a very methodical set of instructions on getting there. So for those of you who are practicing with this very direct and very simple, yet also methodical way of shikantaza, just sitting, go thorough with that. And if you have questions, I will be glad to answer them in our one-on-one consultation as we go through this retreat. And each one is invited to really come and be able to sort out where you are in your practice to see what we can find out and to see what we can discover as to what blocks there may be that prevent you from receiving that unconditional love more thoroughly, or what prevents you from giving that love more thoroughly to those around you and to the whole world. So that is what our Zen practice really is all about. Now, in that regard, if we look at those two aspects that I mentioned, which in the Sanskrit and Pali refer to what we call love in English, the Maitri or Metta, loving kindness, that which wishes the well-being of all, and Karuna, that willingness and resolve to bear the sufferings of all because that they are my very sufferings, and the willingness to give oneself, to walk in compassion in a way of suffering with everyone who is suffering. And that really can be a very, very tough challenge given the kind of world we're living in now. How can we concretize and activate that loving kindness and compassion in our lives as we look at our society today. At the heart of that loving compassion, that loving kindness and compassion is a sense of seeing things as they are. That is a third element of the so-called four immeasurables, or the four boundless realities that are the fruits of practice in Buddhism. They are loving compassion, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy. In short, whenever there is joy in this world, we celebrate with that joy and allow that celebration to really be felt by all of us who share in this being. Sympathetic joy. And that is further grounded in the fourth immeasurable called upekkha or upeksha, meaning seeing things just as they are. What does that mean? That is one of the foremost fruits of this practice. As we sit here breathing in and breathing out, we are able to clear ourselves of our little attachments and our little preferences and are able to see things without those things that make us, the little self, prefer this or that, and see things for what they are. And in seeing things for what they are, we are given a groundedness in peace. And that peace of seeing things as they are is what unleashes the loving kindness, the compassion, and the sympathetic joy. And so in English, there is a term that is often used in conversation. It is what it is. Now you may take that lightly as a way of saying, I can't do anything about it. It is what it is. So it can be a word of resignation. But if you take that more deeply, that it is what it is precisely where we are invited to go and arrive at and be at home there in accepting what is just as it is. I'm as I am. It's what it is, warts and all. So accepting my own limitations, accepting my own quirks, accepting my own little karmic things here and there, accepting my own karmic baggage, I am now able to turn that baggage into gifts, unpack them and let them become gifts for everyone. So in that accepting of things as they are, realizing that it is what it is, I am at peace. I am grounded. And it is that deep peace that, as I noted earlier, allows me to be free to give forth loving kindness, compassion, and dance with the universe in sympathetic joy. There's much more to be supplemented in this, but for today, let me just focus on that and let me offer this for your sitting. Just sit there and breathe in and breathe out and forget the self that is trying to get there, but just allow yourself to settle in the moment and come home to this present moment. Your mind goes off again. Just bring it back home when you recognize that. And as you do so, welcome home. And again, in being rooted and grounded in home, you will be able to open your eyes and see the marvels, the treasures that are already there in your very own home, waiting for you to be discovered, and waiting for you to discover and to be shared with everyone in the universe. The treasures, the infinite treasures that are within that true home that we all share. But first you have to find it for yourself, right there at the heart of your own very being, in the stillness that we cultivate in our Zen practice. And I look forward to meeting each and every one of you in our one-on-one encounter.